Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajikacharya Ashtotartadashi Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajikacharya Ashtotartadashi Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. So we're going to be on page 286 tonight. If you have books. There's another book for this gentleman behind you. You have a book? Okay, we have one for you. Okay, just give me a second here. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay. On this 9th day of April 2024 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in chapter 6 entitled Dhyāna-yoga, the yoga of meditation. Text 33 at the top of page 286. Arjuna vacha, yoyam yogas tvaya proktaha samyena madhusudana etasyaham napashyami chanchalatvat stitim stiram. Arjuna vacha, yoyam yogas tvaya prokta samyena madhusudana etasyaham napashyami chanchalatvat stitim stiram. Arjuna vacha, yoyam yogas tvaya prokta samyena madhusudana etasyaham napashyami chanchalatvat stitim stiram. Arjuna vacha, yoyam yogas tvaya prokta samyena madhusudana etasyaham napashyami chanchalatvat stitim stiram. Arjuna vacha, yoyam yogas tvaya prokta samyena madhusudana etasyaham napashyami chanchalatvat stitim stiram. Go ahead, Devi, you can go. Arjuna vacha, yoyam yogas tvaya prokta samyena madhusudana etasyaham napashyami chanchalatvat stitim stiram. Arjuna vacha, yoyam yogas tvaya prokta samyena madhusudana etasyaham napashyami chanchalatvat stitim stiram. Yoyam yogas tvaya prokta samyena madhusudana etasyaham napashyami chanchalatvat stitim stiram. Not tonight, huh? Not yet. Okay. Go ahead, Tapas. Oh, you didn't get the page? 286, yeah. Go ahead, Prabhu. Arjuna vacha, yoyam yogas tvaya prokta samyena madhusudana etasyaham napashyami chanchalatvat stitim stiram. Word by words. Arjuna vacha, Arjuna said, yaha ayam, this system, yogaha, mysticism, tvaya, by you, proktaha, described, samyena, generally, madhusudana, O killer of the demon Madhu, etasya, of this, aham, I, na, do not, pashyami, see, chanchalatvat, due to being restless, stitim, situation, stiram, stable. Okay. Translation. Arjuna said, O Madhusudan, the system of yoga which you have summarized appears impractical and unendurable to me, for the mind is restless and unsteady. Purport. The system of mysticism described by Lord Krishna to Arjuna, beginning with the words Shuchau Deshe and ending with Yogi Paramaha, is here being rejected by Arjuna out of feeling of inability. It is not possible for an ordinary man to leave home and go to a secluded place in the mountains or jungles to practice yoga in this age of Kali. The present age is characterized by a bitter struggle for a life of short duration. People are not serious about self-realization even by simple practical means, and what to speak of this difficult yoga system, which regulates the mode of living, the manner of sitting, selection of place, and detachment of the mind from material engagements. As a practical man, Arjuna thought it was impossible to follow this system of yoga, even though he was favorably endowed in many ways. He belonged to the royal family and was highly elevated in terms of numerous qualities. He was a great warrior, he had great longevity, and above all, he was the most intimate friend of Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. 5,000 years ago, Arjuna had much better facilities than we do now, yet he refused to accept this system of yoga. In fact, we do not find any record in history of his practicing it at any time. Therefore, this system must be considered generally impossible in this age of Kali. Of course, it may be possible for some very few rare men, but for the people in general, it is an impossible proposal. If this were so 5,000 years ago, then what of the present day? Those who are imitating this yoga system in different so-called schools and societies, although complacent, are certainly wasting their time. They are completely in ignorance of the desired goal. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnanandana Salakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance to him and all members of Sri Parampara. So, this is suddenly Arjuna, after this very, fairly detailed description of yoga by Krishna. As mentioned in the purport, he said where to sit, how to sit, and absolutely free from sex life, and alone, and practicing pranayama, and all of these different things are mentioned. And Arjuna here rejects it. He says, I don't think I can do it. It seems impossible. And the key word, chanchalatva, which will be repeated in the next verse, the mind is very, very restless. I think we can all probably attest to that. It's not so easy to control the mind. There's a million things going on. Just sitting quietly in a room, the mind is going. What to speak of being exposed to all of the stimuli that we are in this modern age? And what's the effect of this is that it breaks your concentration. If you're trying to focus on Krishna, then things are coming from inside and coming from outside, and the mind is more difficult to control than the wind, as explained in the next verse. But that's the prerequisite. That's the whole idea in yoga, is to withdraw the mind from what is summarized as maya, illusion, illusory energy, which is temporary, is constantly changing. We ourselves, as spirit souls, are sat. Sat means we don't change. We don't die, and we're never born. And with all of the different changes that may go on in our mind during each lifetime, we ourselves are not transformed at all. That's the understanding. So the goal of life, as Krishna presents it here, is for us to regain our original spiritual position, in which we're not bewildered by all of this phantasmagoria of the material world, but we're fixed on our spiritual identity and on our personal relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. That's really to our benefit, our great benefit. And that's completely unknown, because it's not something that can be discovered through material science, or even psychology. It has to be discovered or understood through revelation, through the descriptions coming down. Remember at the beginning I mentioned the Om Jnana Timarandasya, and I mentioned the Parampara, This is a very important concept that Krishna spoke about in chapter 4. That Krishna is the source of this knowledge, and it comes down to Brahma. It's revealed in his heart. And then this is the first being in the universe. And then he teaches it to his son, the famous, many of you heard the name Narada Muni. Narada Muni, a great sage of the demigods. He teaches it to Vyasadeva, who's the author of this book. I mean, the original author of the Mahabharata, which is where the Bhagavad Gita is contained. He's also the author of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And so those books contain this knowledge that can turn our lives around, where instead of allowing the mind to be immersed in a million different things that are ultimately ephemeral and changing, the ever-changing material world, that we concentrate on the Spirit, the Supreme Spirit, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and we also begin to understand our nature as pure Spirit. So Arjuna is our representative here. Arjuna has been put into this illusion. Arjuna is an intimate associate of Krishna. Birth after birth, he's a friend of Krishna. So, but in this particular situation, he's faced with a situation where he's confronted by an enemy on the other side, which, and he sees who's in the enemy army. There's a lot of friends and relatives there. His beloved guru is there, who taught him everything he knows about martial arts. And there's his grandfather, not his physical grandfather, but his step-grandfather, who came in and helped him and his brothers to survive after their father died untimely. They were just little boys. So then there's many others, by marriage relationship and by blood relationship he sees on the other side. This comes up in the first chapter of the Gita. And what to speak of his own side, which had so many relationships. So here he is about to embark on this battle, a war to win the kingdom, so that righteousness will rule in the person of his brother. And Krishna's behind it, as he explains in the 4th chapter. So it's all a very righteous battle, but for him, he's taken the role of someone who's too attached to all of these material relationships, and so he sees, what's the point? Suppose I win the battle, and I'm part of the ruling member of the kingdom, but the spoils will be soaked with the blood of my friends and relatives and my beloved guru. So I'd rather go to the forest. That's another option. I'll just renounce everything and go to the forest and wander around. But he knows, and Krishna knows, he's not suited for that. So he doesn't just leave the chariot and start walking off. He sits down on the chariot, drops his bow, and then he prays to Krishna. Now I'm approaching you in a different capacity as your disciple. Please tell me what's the best for me. What is Dharma? This word Dharma is so key to understanding the Vedic culture. Dharma, every word in Sanskrit has a root, and from which it and various variations of the word can be made. So the root of the word Dharma is Dri, and we know that word very well in this temple, because we're worshiping Giridhari. The word Dhari is a little variation of Dri. Dhari means to hold up, right? He held up. Giridhari. Giri means mountain. He held up the mountain. So Dri means the thing which sustains your existence, which is most intrinsic to your existence. And everything has a dharma. I like to point out, forgive me if you heard this one 10 times before, but even inanimate things, like it probably gives the example of salt and sugar. So they look alike, right? But we know you can't use them interchangeably. One is salty and one is sweet, right? So the dharma of salt is to be salty, and the dharma of sugar is to be sweet. And if you get something that's called sugar, and you taste it, and it's not sweet or it's salty, this isn't sugar, it's useless. So the point is that everything has a dharma. Chairs, this one you've heard before. You sit down with, these are new chairs, relatively new. We had plastic chairs that some of them fell apart, So if you sit on this chair and boom, it collapses and you get on the floor, you'll be disappointed. The chair is not performing its dharma to hold you up, right? So similarly, we as souls have a dharma, and that basic dharma is to serve. Right now, we don't think so. I'm independent. I can do what I want. No. We're serving the demands of our senses. During the pandemic, suddenly everyone became very, very aware of breathing. Mostly you take it for granted, right? You don't think, oh, I have to breathe in and out. It's automatic. But saying, oh, it can be problematic. If you can't breathe, you die. And so we took, some of us got vaccinations, those who believed in them. And then we had the masks and keep your distance, so that your essential breathing will take place. So we have this, our most essential dharma is to serve. We're serving the demands of our body. We're serving, the wife serves the husband serves the wife, and they both serve the children. Children don't necessarily want to serve, but they're still serving, basically. So this is the nature. So where can that service be rendered for our greatest benefit? If we're simply serving the demands of our senses, which most people do, as you grow up, senses change. Well, I want to see this, I want to hear this, I want to, like that. And then or typically, someone in the modern age, you'll get addicted to something. It may not be cigarettes. It used to be in my time, everyone was smoking. Every kid got, started to smoke at age 15 or so. So then it became obvious, that's very damaging to your health. But now, as I like to point out, sometimes I go to the supermarket, say Ralph's. And what do I get there? I get kale, and I get blueberries. That's basically all I buy there, organic blueberries and kale. But to get to the blueberries, I walk down one of the aisles, and either it's intoxicating beverages on both sides, or it's snacks. They're both addictive, isn't it? They've done, this highly processed food. It's processed in order to make it addictive. The taste, the actual balance of the salt and the fat and the whole thing is just right. So you can't just eat one, right? So you're serving your need for that, right? You have a strong desire, and you wind up, well, there's 4 bags of Doritos. They're empty. What happened? So that's a demand, right? And that means you're getting some pleasure from it. And you're experiencing that, and that's completely obliterating any sense of any higher pleasure. You know what I mean? In other words, the way you get your pleasure is bodily or mental, interactions, configurations. But as in our own lives, we don't have look elsewhere. That can also result in pain, right? If you keep eating that way, you can get diabetes, you can get sick, you can get fat. A huge percentage of people in America are overweight, and a frightening number are actually obese, because they're just victims to this, to this. So how to direct your senses and your mind in such a way for your greatest ultimate benefit? That's the art of bhakti. And we find, so in this chapter he spoke about the process of yoga. Yoga simply means to link the soul, the pure consciousness, with the Supreme. You may not call it God or anything, but the Supreme Truth, the source of everything, ultimate spirit. So this is one way of doing it, but it's not practical in this age, really, for the vast majority, because we're so restless. Right at the beginning of the Srimad Bhagavatam, the first chapter, there's a verse describing a few of the disqualifications of people in this age for a spiritual life. And it say, prayena alpayashaksabhya kalavasmin yugejana manda sumanda matayo manda bhagya upadrita. So the first disqualification, this is for the most part, not every single person, but for the most part, people don't live that long compared to previous ages. This may sound astounding, but just in the previous age, which ended maybe 5,000 years ago, people would live up to 1,000 years. Now, if you live to 100, oh, it's amazing. You get in newspaper, the oldest person just passed away. They were 120 or something. I think it just happened somebody. Fine. But just living a long time isn't qualified. And then they said the other, manda, sumanda. So the word manda means that people aren't very interested or very eager to take up the austerities and the discipline of yoga in any way, which is for our ultimate benefit. There's too many things that you can get your immediate benefit, sense gratification. So they're lazy in the matter of spiritual life. And if they happen to be interested, sumanda matayo, they're misguided. So many yogis, when the people got interested in the East, The Beatles, especially George Harrison, Ravi Shankar, you know, back in the 60s, 70s. So there was an opening, you know, and everyone was, young people dropping LSD, so they're, you know, God visions and all this. So certain yogis, and, you know, they took advantage, came to America, and they set up these yoga studios. I went to one, and it works, you know, it's physical yoga, you know. And there's a little tinge of spirit, you know, we did meditation, you know, but nothing really serious. So that's Sumanda Madhyo, that's being misguided. They're not really taught the actual Dharma, right, for elevation of the soul to the back home, back to Godhead. They're not taught that. I mean, that wasn't mentioned. So there's profiteering on this. So that's Sumanda, and Manda Bhagya, in this way we're unfortunate, and upadrata, always disturbed. There's so many disturbances, you know, just like the weather, you know, global warming. It's a major disturbance. Some people, there's going to be a lot of migrants coming, you know, here. It's been completely changed. In anyone who's been here for any number of years, you know, it was never 48 degrees. I'm sorry, you know, on April 9th, even in the early morning. You know, I didn't have to wear my overcoat, you know, my winter coat to come to Mangalartik in the middle of April. And all the water, we had 2 months where it rained, sometimes a little heavy, December and January, for many, many years. I've been here for 35 years. Now suddenly, the last few years, it's all changed, you know. So that's the nature of it. We have the Adi-atmic, Adi-bhautik, Adi-daivik miseries. Adi-daivik are the earthquakes and the volcanoes and the atmospheric rivers pouring down us and all these things. And yes, Antarctica is melting. Let's get ready for it. It's going to rise. The ocean's going to rise. I won't be around, but you will. Anyway, so maybe. But the point is, these things are happening, and if they don't happen right away, the threat of them is misery in itself. The worry and anxiety, you know, do I have to buy a house in somewhere in Montana? You know. So this is the nature of Kali Yuga. It's much worse than it was before. In the Satya Yuga, the first age, there's like 4 ages. They go like seasons or in cycles. People live for 100,000 years sometimes. And sattvic, it means that there wasn't all this disturbance, and everyone was Brahminical and practicing yoga and living very simply, and you know. So with the time, it degrades, and we're in that degraded age. So Arjuna representing us, and you know, not Kali Yuga yet. This is the end of Dwapara Yuga, but he says, "I can't do it," and Prabhupada, he's driving home that point now. If he couldn't do it, then what to speak of us? You see? But the principles of yoga have to somehow be applied in this age also. And the basic principle is to withdraw the mind from the phantasmagoria of the material world, which is always presenting some new thing to be attracted to, and some new thing to be repelled by. That's the flip side of it, you know. And so, which is preventing you from controlling the mind and fixing it on the Supreme. So, what to do? So Arjuna now, he will continue his complaint in this very famous next verse, and basically dealing with the mind, because any yoga system ultimately comes down to controlling the mind and fixing it on the Supreme. But he's honing down and emphasizing the point that the mind is just too powerful to control by the system you've outlined. It's not that there's no system. The practical system is this bhakti yoga. But here he's telling this, and the whole thing will continue in this way, and Arjuna, you can just feel Arjuna saying, oh my God, I can't do it, until the final last verse of this chapter. And Krishna basically says, don't worry. The best yogi is one who's always thinking me within his heart with great faith and love and devotion. And Arjuna, you can hear a big sigh of relief practically coming off the page. Oh. Well, that's what I'm already doing. He's a great friend of Krishna, life after life. So let's read the next verse, and you'll see this verse really brings home the point. Chanchalam himana Krishna pramati balavadridham tasyahang nigraham manye vayor eva sudushkaram. The mind is restless, turbulent, obstinate, and very strong, O Krishna. And to subdue it, I think, is more difficult than controlling the wind. Purport: the mind is so strong and obstinate that it sometimes overcomes the intelligence, although the mind is supposed to be subservient to the intelligence. For a man in the practical world who has to fight so many opposing elements, it is certainly very difficult to control the mind. Artificially, one may establish a mental equilibrium toward both friend and enemy, but ultimately, no worldly man can do so, for this is more difficult than controlling the raging wind. In the Vedic literature, Katha Upanishad 1:3-4, it is said, Atmanam ratinam vidhi shadiram ratamevacha. Buddhim tu sadatim vidhi manak pragraham evacha. Indriyani hayang ahur vishayangs teshu gocharan. Atmendriya manoyuktam bhoktet yahu manishinaha. The individual is the passenger in the car of the material body, and the intelligence is the driver. Mind is the driving instrument, and the senses are the horses. The self is thus the enjoyer or sufferer in the association of the mind and senses. So it is understood by great thinkers. Now, I got an assignment for you, Chad. Look through the illustrations in the middle of the book and find the illustration for this verse. You'll see the horse. Yes. You know it is. Intelligence is, end quote, intelligence is supposed to direct the mind, but the mind is so strong and obstinate that it often overcomes even one's own intelligence, as an acute infection may surpass the efficacy of medicine. Such a strong mind is supposed to be controlled by the practice of yoga, but such practice is never practical for a worldly person like Arjuna. And what can we say of modern man? The simile used here is appropriate. One cannot capture the blowing wind, and it is even more difficult to capture the turbulent mind. The easiest way to control the mind, as suggested by Lord Chaitanya, is chanting Hare Krishna, the great mantra for deliverance, in all humility. The method prescribed is Savai Manak Krishna Padada Bindayo. One must engage one's mind fully in Krishna. Only then will there remain no other engagements to agitate the mind. So this is a key point in our philosophy. Understanding the basics of yoga, that we are, in a sense, victimized by our body and mind, and even the intelligence, which is not at all infused with understanding of Krishna, because we completely identify with them. That's the thing. This is me. This is me, my body and my who I am, you know. And so when you become attracted to something that you know in your intelligence is not good for you, but the attraction is so strong, you do it anyway. This is the mind overcoming the intelligence. And what happens if you keep doing that, the intelligence stops sending you those messages. You know, is that and then you're being more victimized. So we need a powerful means of controlling the mind and fixing it on the Supreme, that Supreme Lord, you know. And that means is chanting that mantra. It's the Maha Mantra. I discovered a wonderful article. You know, the Back to Godhead magazine, which is kind of not so famous as it used to be. Prabhupada once called it the backbone of the movement. When he came, he was publishing in India this magazine every fortnight, I think. And the magazine was maybe 8 pages of newsprint. You know, we didn't have much money, but he was publishing. He wrote some articles, and others wrote some articles. And he would personally distribute it on the streets of Delhi and other places like that. So then one day a friend said, you know, these magazines, they come and they go. People throw them away. But if you print books, they'll stay. They're permanent. And Prabhupada took that to heart, and that's when he started the project of writing the first volumes of the Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto. So that was important. Krishna sent that person, you know. So this magazine has been continuing. I worked on the magazine from 1975 through 1978. And then I continue to actually edit the first article of the magazine, which is Prabhupada's lecture. Somebody picked out a lecture that would give a transcript, and then we'd edit it up, you know. So I forgot how. So I have a lot of them at home, you know. Oh, I haven't bound them up, but years go by. They're printed every other month now. We used to print them every month. But anyway, 6 a year, and they're very substantial and wonderful. My old friend Nagaraj is the editor now since '85. For, you know, quite a while. Very nice. So there was an article that I discovered in there. It was all about the Hare Krishna mantra.
and quotes from the Vedas and other sources, about the mantra. And I'm going to come and I'll share this. Maybe tomorrow. Today's Tuesday. Maybe tomorrow I'll read some things from it, because it's important to know the depth and the importance of this mantra that's at the center of our movement here. And it may induce you to chant more seriously and realize what a blessing it is. And there's one verse I'll share with you, which is one of these verses that, are you kidding me? It's like, is that a real thing? So it starts out like this. These verses, I have to review the verses more. But anyway, the last line is the key line. And it says, Binnat Van Nama Namido. Thank you. Here's my alter ego. Nama Chintamani Krishna's Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha. See, once I get the first word, it just flows. Nama Chintamani Krishna's Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha. Purnak Shuddho Nityamukto Abhinat Van Nama Namino. So the holy name is like a Chintamani gem. Now, why is that analogy picked out? Because the Chintamani gem transforms anything it comes in contact with. It's like the philosopher's stone. Prabhupada uses that phrase sometimes, the philosopher's stone. He calls it oftentimes a touchstone, but a touchstone is something you check gold with. But anyway, he gave it a new meaning. Whatever you touch, it turns to gold. That's the philosopher's stone. So this Chintamani gem, it means if you touch it and hear it, you concentrate on this whole, it will transform your consciousness. What's the proof? This Hare Krishna movement. Most devotees started their involvement by just chanting Hare Krishna outside the movement, So, like me, that's what I did. But it definitely has a deep effect. So it's a Nama Chintamani Krishna Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha. So this is a very profound concept. Rasa is the relationship with God, which is full of bliss, it's eternal, it never ends, it's full of variety, and it never ever new, So this is the very form of that relationship. In other words, if you chant it purely, seriously, you can, that revelation will come. What's your actual relationship with God? Will be revealed. Purnak, it is complete. It's the complete process of yoga. This is the essential process we do. We sit and chant japa, meditative Hare Krishna, and we chant and dance. Some devotees in India, you'll read the Chaitanya, they're doing that all day. I mean, like Haridas Thakur, who is the acharya or the exemplar for chanting the holy name, he would chant 300,000 names a day. That's 12 times more than we're assigned to chant. If we chant 16 rounds, all right, I chant my 16 round, took 2 hours or so. So he's chanting 24 hours, but he's chanting faster, so probably it would take him 16 hours. If you chant 5 minutes a round, you'll see how fast you Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And then you have to also hear every name. So he's fully absorbed. So he's the acharya. He's in the Prema Dhwani, the Jai Om Vishnu Pad. He's so famous. It's so important. So he's the acharya for the holy name, and that verse continues. Nama Chintamani Krishna's Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha Purnak. It's a complete process. Mukta. It's completely liberated. There's no tinges of material energy that can, if you're chanting, then you're on the spiritual platform. Nitya Mukto, eternally liberated. And then the key is, why the others are true, Abhinatva Nama Namina. The word binna means separated. Abhinna means not separated. Abhinatva Nama Namino. Nama is the name, Namina is the named. So the named is Krishna himself, and the name is Krishna. So there's no difference between the name and the named. No, I cannot comprehend that. That is, so, that God is in his name in the full power there. We can't realize it, but if we become pure, there's another verse, it goes with this verse. Atakshi Krishna namadi nababe graham indriyai sevan mukhe jivado swayameva spuracheda. This is a really important verse, quoted in the purport at least once in this Bhagavad Gita. So the holy name, form, qualities, and pastimes of Krishna. Sri Krishna Nam Adi. Adi means etc. So there's four things that define a person: the name, the form, right? The qualities, and the activities or the pastimes. Those four things define Krishna. But it begins with the name. So the holy name, form, qualities, and pastimes of Krishna cannot be understood with our materially conditioned senses and mind. But if you begin serving Krishna, beginning with the tongue, by chanting and tasting Krishna Prasadam, then ultimately, if you follow the process, faithfully, all your senses will become purified, and Krishna will reveal himself. This is the point. When it comes to God realization, it's all a matter of pleasing God, so He will reveal. That's why He says at the beginning, at the 18th chapter, very important verse, how to know God? Bhaktya mam abhijanati yabanyastasmi tattvataha tato mam tattvato gyatva vishate tadanantaram. By the process of bhakti, only by the process of bhakti can one understand Krishna. Because it all depends on Him revealing Himself. And He only reveals Himself to the degree that you're truly devoted to Him. That you're interested in pleasing Him and serving Him. This is the essence of bhakti yoga. And this is why it's a little difficult from the outside to know, really? Because the whole perfection of it is to be 100% concerned and absorbed in serving the desires of Krishna and pleasing Krishna. And so the natural thing is to say at first, well, what about me? Where am I going to get pleasure from this? And the point is that we are part and parcel of Krishna. And that He is Anandamaya Bhyasat. He is filled with Ananda. Wouldn't you want to be filled with Ananda all the time if you were God? Or would you say, nah, it's ups and downs, that makes life interesting? No. You would want a variety, right? You would want a variety of different relationships, But all of them would be full of bliss, naturally, because you're God. So we're part of that program. We're part of, our natural position is to be part of Krishna's entourage in the spiritual world, either as cowherd boys, cowherd girls, as parents, or as servants, or as cows, or whatever. Everything is fully conscious there. The cows, the trees, consciousness is pervading. They all have their role to play in Krishna's wonderful Leela, which is ever fresh and ever new. It never gets hackneyed. So the whole point is, Abhinatva Namanamino, that simply by chanting this name, and there's no prerequisites. We're not eligible, according to the Vedas, to chant the Vedas, unless we're born and raised in Brahmin families and trained. Women, sorry, no. Sudras, like me, sorry, no. You can't chant the Vedas. But you can chant Hare Krishna, which is the essence of all the Vedas. Who cares about these other Vedas? That's the important point. Don't get sidetracked, karma kanda. Oh, let me go to Indraloka. I'll live so long and I'll enjoy like anything, You can get there if you do the right things, but it's not eternal. Boom, it comes down. Chini punye martya lokam vishanti. When your time is up, your pious credit card is no longer passes. They're all, expired. Then you have to be thrown down here to the world of death. Krishna says in the 9th chapter, Martya lokam. Martya, sound familiar? Mortician, mortuary, mortal, same word. In the Sanskrit is Martya, Martya loka. This is the world of death. So we don't want to go to heaven. That's just another distraction, postponement. We want to go back to Godhead, back to Krishna loka. And we have a practical means. Arjuna is rejecting this, and Arjuna said, well, you can do it with practice, and then Arjuna said, well, what if I fail? He's not very optimistic that he can do it. So then Krishna will say at the end of the chapter, don't worry, as long as you think of me all the time and love me, which he does. So these verses are really important, especially this 34 is very often quoted because we can experience it. The mind is very obstinate. I make a little joke, which is never funny, but I'm going to give it to you anyway. The mind has a mind of its own. So we have to take this chanting seriously, and then we find out, how to perfect the chanting. Then all these other things we give up. Don't do it, which takes the mind away, distractions. We have to live in such a way that the mind can be calm, generally, and then when we apply it to, hearing. And let me just give you a little taste, because if you want, the Hare Krishna mantra has expanded into unlimited other verses that can absorb the mind. And I find, the Hare Krishna mantra is so pure. I mean, everything is there. But I find it's more engaging for the intelligence to have these verses that are describing Krishna's pastimes and qualities that you can really get into. And you have the added element of the poetry and the rhythm and the Sanskrit language, which is the perfect language. So I'll give you a couple of examples. Over the years, I've memorized some of these. And first, the Bhagavatam is an ocean of these. There's wonderful verses in the Bhagavatam. There's the prayers of the gopis, in the text chapter 21 of the 10th canto, chapter 35 and chapter 31 is very famous. This is when the gopis are separated from Krishna in the rasa dance. They're all separated, and then they're wandering. They imitate his pastimes. They're mad in separation, and then he still doesn't come back. And so they go to the bank of the Yamuna, and then they start singing these songs of separation. And one of them is very famous because it's very all the Sankirtan devotees who distribute books. This verse is very encouraging for them. Just get the beat. They're all in this beat. Tavakratam tapta jivanam kavabediditam kalmashapaham shavanamangalam shrimadatatam bhuvigunanti buddhidhajana. So Tava, they're speaking to Krishna as if he's right there. Tava kata. Kata amrita, the nectar of talks about you of glorification. Tava katam. Tapta jivanam. Now tapta means burning, suffering. And jivanam means the life and soul. So the nectar of your glorification is the life and soul of those living entities who are burning in this material world. Shavana Mangalam, very auspicious to hear. Srimad, full of spiritual power. Srimad Atatam, when uttered, Srimad Atatam. Bhuvi Gunantiye Buddhidhajana Tavakatamatam Tapta Jivanam Kavabadiditam Kalmashapaham Shavana Mangalam. I'm sorry, I forgot the second line. Kavabadiditam, this is glorified by great poets and learned sages like Srila Prabhupada all over the world. Kavabadiditam Kalmasha Apaham, destroys all sinful reactions. That's the first thing we know. We're carrying these sinful reactions with us, from things we've done in this life and in the past life. But hearing Hare Krishna and chanting Hare Krishna and hearing these other things destroys them all. All of our backlog of sinful reactions. It's very auspicious. And Srimad Atatam, full of spiritual power. Certainly, Bhuvigunandiye Buddhidhajana, those who are glorifying you in this world are the best welfare workers. You see? In other words, the best thing we can do for the other people is to introduce them to the holy name and the books and somehow, interest them in Krishna consciousness so that they also can experience the hearing and the chanting of this pure vibration. So that's how this movement is spread all over the world. No matter where you go, it could be Africa, it could be the Philippines, it could be China or Russia. If people take this process seriously, they feel the benefit. And before you know it, there's a center there in Nairobi, and there's a center there in Kazakhstan and everywhere, all over the world. And sincere devotees who are chanting and distributing books. And we can be part of that. So that's the great blessing of this age, given by Krishna in the form of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And it's there in the Vedas. I'll give you one of these Vedas, these verses that's in this article I mentioned. This is the most famous, perhaps. Kali Santarana Upanishad. The name of the Upanishad means this Upanishad will deliver you from Kali Yuga. And the essence of it in these two verses. The first verse, we all know the first verse. We're ready by heart. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Iti Shodashakam Nam Kali Kalmasha Nashanam Nataks Paratadopaya Sava Vedeshu Drishyate. It's wonderful verse. Iti means thus, these, quote, these 16 names. Shodashaka Nam, 16 names. Kali Kalmasha Nashanam. The same word Kalmasha is used in the other verse. Destroys, is the best means of destroying the ills and evils of this Kali Yuga. Kali Kalmasha Nashanam. Natak Padataroba, you may search through all the Vedas. Natak Padatrobaya Sava Vedeshu Drishyate. You will not find a more efficient means of destroying the ills of Kali Yuga than this. But besides that, it ultimately also bestows the greatest benediction of love of God. So it gets rid of all the painful things, all the our baggage of karma and everything we're dragging along from birth to birth in our mind and and that's all eradicated by the blessings of Krishna and the holy name. And the greatest good and that we really want, the jewel of pure love for God, is also nourished and ultimately bestowed by this mantra if we chant it seriously. So and Shantalam, the restless mind, can be controlled if we work on this. Why? Because it's so attractive. The name Krishna means all attractive. If you just hear this sound, you try to hear it before you know it. It's giving you a certain bliss. And behind it is so many other things. So we have time for 1 or 2 more shlokas. So, okay, so we'll stick with these songs of the gopis. So that was one from the 31, chapter 35, one of my favorite all-time chapters. It's more songs of the gopis. So they're all in separation from Krishna. They're describing Krishna at home. They're churning the butter, doing what they do, but while they're doing, they're singing Krishna's glories, and they're completely blissed. So what are they singing of? He describes Anucharaisa Manavarna, this is a different beat. Anucharaisa Manavarna Taviya Adipurashi Hivacha Dabhuti Vanacharo Giditatesha Tadantir Venunavayati Gasi Yadani Vanalatasta Dava Atmani Vishnum Vyanjayanti Hiva Pushpa Paladya Panadabhada Vitapamandadhara Prema Rishtatanavova Vashusma. I memorized these. It's got a beat to it. I memorized these before they were published. I'm working on the book. For 6 years in Miami, working on these verses and the whole last 77 chapters of the 10th canto. So we come to this chapter and say, well, I want to memorize this one. So it's manuscript form, I'm memorizing. So what does that mean? Anushadai, his Krishna's friends, those who are walking with him. So Manavarnataviya, they are glorifying him, as they Anushadai Samanavarna. Adi Purusha, it is as if, they say if, they don't know he's God. It is as if the Supreme Person is surrounded by his energies. They compare him to God, but they don't know he's God. Ivachala Buddha. Vanacharo, within the forest, they're wandering. Vanacharo Girita Teshu, and on the sides of the mountain, Govardhan, they're going everywhere with the cows, The cows are doing their thing and grazing, and the boys are doing their thing, playing. That's their job, to play all day with Krishna. We can get there too. So, Girita Teshu, Venunavi Digasi. So then Krishna plays the flute to call the cows. It's God. With the flute sound, he's calling their names, the different names of the groups of cows. So Vena Gati Adari. And then what happens as he walks in the forest, you've seen all this time-lapse photography where you can see a rose bush bloom in a matter of 30 seconds, right? So that's what happens. So all the trees suddenly blossom with fruits and flowers, and the creepers also, that are winding around. So as they blossom and Krishna's walking, the branches become heavy with the fruits and they all bow down. So the gopis are seeing this in their mind's eye. So they're Vanalatastarava Atmani Vishnum, and it's as if their blossoming is like suddenly a yogi who's meditating and suddenly realizes God. They compare it to that. Vanalatastra Atmani Vishnum Vyanjayanta Iva Pushpa Paladya Pranadabhadavitapa. So they're bowing down, and the sap or the honey, whatever, is also dripping down, just like tears of ecstasy are coming. They're visualizing all this. And so there's many verses like that in this 35th chapter. It's available online. You don't even have to buy. It's good if you buy a Bhagavatam set, but so that's just a few. And if you memorize these, I'm telling you, there's nothing like memorizing a verse to become absorbed in the verse. I can show you, there's a few tricks, things to understand about how to chant the Sanskrit, the meter, because it gets pretty complicated after a while. All right, I'll end with one thing. I won't give you a translation, but you see the thing. This is called Virodavali. Okay, you finally found it. Tomorrow, So, Virodavali is a kind of poetry in Sanskrit that is calling out to Krishna. A series of calling out. So it's all vocative form. So you can do things like this. It goes on and on. And meanwhile, you can imagine, if you understand, just like I wrote one poem called, what's it called? Oh, Krishna, the King of Sweet. So this is based on a Sanskrit poem by Yamunacharya. And it's along the lines of Madodam, Madodam, Babadasya Vibho. Your lips are sweet, your smile is sweet, your lotus eyes and face are sweet, your heart is sweet, your name is sweet, O King of sweet, your sweet complete. And goes on like that, you know. It goes it's easy to rhyme because every word is the same at the end, you know. But it's still so. But you know, the Sanskrit has a certain value to it. But for us, it's probably good to have it in English, right? Because you understand the meaning. So that's why I took the trouble to put some of it. So this is the way that you know, this complements. It doesn't supplant, but it complements the Hare Krishna mantra, which is the basic mantra. But then Krishna really responds when he understands you're glorifying him. There's a verse about that, and I'll end with this one. This is first canto, second chapter, text 17 or 18. Shrinvatam sakata Krishna punya shabana kirtanaha ridyantaksto yabhadrani vidunoti suditsatam. Very important verse. So Shrinvatam means hearing Krishna's glories, and you can be chanting him and hearing. Swakata, his own kata. Krishna in your heart, Krishna in the heart of every devotee, every living entity. Srinvatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shavana Kirtana means that just by hearing and chanting you're getting piety, and not material piety but spiritual piety. You know, Punya Shavana Kirtana Ridyantaksto, Krishna is situated in the heart. Yabhadrani Vidunoti, he cleanses away the abhadras, the inauspicious things in your heart. All the latent material desires, the lust, the anger, the greed, the depression, you know, all of this stuff is, we don't want it, you know. And with Krishna, he cleanses it away, and you become peaceful and happy. Describe the progressive, I won't give you all the verses. So that's what, you know, hearing and chanting, and it's good to do it in our native language, but it's nice to learn some of these verses and taste some of the Sanskrit. Sanskrit means perfectly composed. And it's the source of all the language, just like the word martya. That's the, you know, mortician. In other words, the death. Tumalo, tumultuous. You know, there's so many words in Sanskrit that obviously are basis of English words. So anyway, Arjuna is not able to practice this. He says, my mind is too restless. But in the end, the next chapter, 7th chapter, Krishna will give us a way of how we can easily fix our mind and become absorbed in Krishna. And ultimately, it's chanting the holy name. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol. Sorry, I saw such a large crowd that I got a little overwhelmed. I guess because it's Taco Tuesday, huh? Yeah. I'm sorry? 17 more people. 117? 17. Yeah. That's right. Yeah.